The morning began like any other until massive shadows darkened major cities worldwide. The Vexillian warships hung in the atmosphere like obsidian mountains, their hulls absorbing sunlight rather than reflecting it. Commander Zextar's holographic image appeared simultaneously on every screen across the planet. His scales gleamed as he spoke with practiced superiority. Your primitive civilization is now under Vexillian protection. Resistance is unnecessary and inadvisable. Global panic ensued, stock markets collapsed, and military forces scrambled uselessly. In the chaos, Dr. Elena Vasquez noticed something peculiar about the alien transmission, a pattern in their communication protocols that sparked her curiosity. While world leaders shouted over each other in emergency sessions, Elena quietly requested access to all available data on the visitors. "They've given us 72 hours to organize our surrender," she told the frantic United Earth Council. That's 72 hours to find their weakness. As Elena left the council chambers, the sky outside had taken on an eerie purple hue, the result of Vexillian energy fields establishing dominance over Earth's atmosphere. Citizens crowded the streets, some in prayer, others looting stores in desperation. Military jets that approached the alien vessels simply disappeared in silent flashes of light. The world had never been so united in feeling utterly helpless. Elena made her way to her laboratory at MIT, weaving through crowds of dazed onlookers. Her phone buzzed constantly with colleagues seeking answers she didn't yet have. The campus had become an impromptu refugee center, with students setting up aid stations for those who had fled Boston in panic. Elena ignored all distractions, her mind already racing through possibilities. Inside her lab, she immediately began analyzing the transmission data. The Vexillian message had been broadcast in 27 human languages simultaneously, yet Elena noted that the syntax remained oddly identical across all versions. "Too perfect," she muttered, pulling up translation algorithms on her system. "Natural language doesn't work that way." Her assistant, Dr. James Chen, arrived breathless. "The president wants to surrender immediately. They're saying these aliens have conquered 17 other worlds. And yet they're giving us time," Elena said, her eyes never leaving her screens. "Why not just take what they want? Why announce themselves at all?" James shook his head. "Procedure, maybe. Or they enjoy watching us squirm." Elena suddenly straightened, pointing to a sequence of data packets embedded within the alien transmission. "Look at these intervals. They're mathematically perfect. Too perfect." She pulled up Earth's response transmissions, sent hurriedly by various governments. "Compare this to our chaotic signals. Irregular, emotional, adaptive." "What are you suggesting?" James asked, leaning closer. Elena's eyes gleamed with the first spark of hope anyone had felt since the ships appeared. "I'm suggesting that these Vexillians, for all their technological superiority, might be fundamentally different from us in how they think. They're showing signs of rigid algorithmic thinking patterns. And if there's one thing humanity has always excelled at, it's breaking patterns." Outside, another Vexillian vessel moved into position above the city, its shadow engulfing the campus in darkness. But in Elena's lab, a small light of possibility began to glow. "Get me everything we have on quantum computing and chaos theory," she told James, "and find me the best game theorists and hackers on the planet. We have less than 3 days to prepare a welcome these aliens weren't expecting." Elena assembled an unlikely team at her underground laboratory. A disgraced cryptographer, a teenage gaming champion, a cultural anthropologist, and a quantum physicist. While military generals planned futile attacks, Elena's team analyzed everything. The architectural structure of the alien ships, the mathematical sequences in their language, the precise timing of their communications. The teenage gamer, Milo, recognized something familiar. These guys operate like old-school AI in strategy games, super powerful, but totally predictable if you know the patterns. The anthropologist observed rigid body language in every Vexillian transmission, suggesting a highly structured hierarchy. The cryptographer cracked part of their communication code, revealing that despite their technology, their thought processes followed strict, unchanging protocols. Alina's eyes lit up as pieces connected. "They're advanced but not adaptable," she whispered. "They've conquered through superiority, never facing a species that could outthink rather than outgun them." Dr. Sophia Reyes, the quantum physicist, pushed her glasses up her nose as she studied the energy readings from the Vexillian ships. Their quantum field generators operate on remarkably consistent frequencies, she noted, comparing wavelength patterns, almost as if they've never encountered interference before, or never needed to adapt to it. Alina added, watching as Milo mapped the patrol patterns of smaller Vexillian scout ships on a digital globe. The cryptographer, Dr. Victor Kwan, had been silent for hours, his fingers flying across his keyboard as he analyzed transmission data. Now he looked up, his expression a mixture of disbelief and excitement. Their entire communication system uses a base 12 mathematical structure with perfect internal consistency. No redundancies, no adaptive algorithms, nothing we would consider essential for secure communications. Because they've never needed them, Alina concluded. They've never faced an enemy that could crack their codes. Dr. Maya Johnson, the anthropologist, projected a three-dimensional model of a Vexillian based on their transmissions. Their physical stance never varies beyond these parameters, she explained, highlighting the alien's rigid posture. In human terms, this suggests a species that values conformity above all else. Their success likely comes from perfect execution of established strategies rather than innovation. A notification chimed, and Alina checked the timer on her tablet. 48 hours remaining until their deadline. Milo, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly sat upright. "I've got it." The 17-year-old pulled up a complex simulation on his screen. "I've been modeling their ship movements against classic gaming strategies. They're using a variation of the Zerg overwhelming force protocol from StarCraft, but with a fatal flaw." He pointed to a pattern that repeated across different Vexillian ship squadrons. "They never deviate from optimal paths. If we can introduce enough random variables simultaneously, their response time lags by exactly 3.7 seconds while they recalculate." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Alina moved to a central holographic display, pulling elements from each team member's work. "So we have a technologically superior species with rigid thinking patterns, predictable communication protocols, inflexible physical responses, and a quantifiable delay when faced with multiple unexpected variables." She looked at each member of her improbable team. "Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to improvise, to create brilliant solutions in chaotic conditions. We've spent our evolution adapting, while they've spent theirs perfecting." Victor nodded slowly. "We don't need to match their technology." "No," Alina agreed, a plan forming in her mind. "We need to overwhelm their ability to process the unexpected. We need to become the cosmic equivalent of jazz musicians playing to an audience that only understands classical music." Time ticked away as Alina's team worked feverishly. The physicist discovered that Vexillian quantum technology operated on predictable wavelengths, unlike Earth's experimental quantum systems, which embraced chaos theory. Milo hacked a minor Vexillian communication node by recognizing patterns similar to those in his favorite games. Most significantly, the anthropologist analyzed hundreds of historical Vexillian conquest recordings, noting they always followed identical strategic steps, never adapting when faced with unexpected variables. Meanwhile, Earth's populations prepared for surrender, unaware that Alina had presented her findings to a select group of world leaders. Their evolutionary path rewarded rigid consistency, while ours rewarded creative adaptation, she explained. They expect compliance and cannot conceive of asymmetric resistance. The Council approved her daring plan with 12 hours remaining before the deadline. Dr. Sophia connected her quantum interference device to the main power grid, her hands steady despite her exhaustion. The frequency modulator is calibrated to disrupt their communication bands for approximately 7 minutes, she explained. Any longer would require more power than we can safely generate. 7 minutes should be enough, Elena replied, studying the holographic map of Vexillian ship positions above major cities. We don't need to defeat them completely in the first wave. We just need to introduce enough chaos to trigger their recalculation protocols. In the corner, Dr. Victor worked with military encryption specialists to prepare the signal that would infiltrate the temporarily vulnerable Vexillian network. Their security is impressive but utterly predictable, he muttered. Like a fortress with impenetrable walls, but always the same number of guards taking exactly the same patrol routes. Dr. Maya approached with her tablet displaying new findings. I've completed my analysis of their historical conquest procedures. In 17 documented cases, they followed an identical sequence. Demonstration of force, demand for surrender, installation of resource extraction infrastructure, and population control measures. She pointed to key data points. Not once did they face organized resistance after the initial demonstration. They literally have no protocols for a species that appears to surrender but doesn't. Milo looked up from his station, where he was finalizing the specialized virus that would introduce subtle errors into the Vexillian navigational systems. It's like they've only played the game on easy mode until now, he said, his young face showing both exhaustion and excitement. They've never had to adapt their strategy mid-game. Helena nodded, checking the secure communications from laboratories around the world where similar teams have been assembled. Humanity has survived and thrived precisely because we've always played on hard mode. Our entire history is adapting to the unexpected. Floods, droughts, plagues, climate shifts. Our literature is filled with stories of overcoming impossible odds through cleverness rather than brute force. The room fell silent as a notification appeared on the main screen. A message from Commander Zextar demanding confirmation of Earth's surrender arrangements. Elena took a deep breath before responding with exactly the kind of subservient message the Vexillians would expect. Send the final protocol to our teams worldwide, she instructed as soon as the transmission ended. We have less than 12 hours to prepare our synchronized response. Dr. Victor looked up from his station. You realize this plan violates every military doctrine in human history. We're not fighting with weapons or direct resistance. Elena smiled slightly. Exactly. We're fighting with the one thing the Vexillians don't understand and can't predict. Human creativity unleashed simultaneously across thousands of points of contact. We're going to introduce so many unexpected variables that their perfect system will experience the computational equivalent of panic. As the surrender deadline approached, humanity appeared to comply perfectly with Vexillian demands. Landing zones were prepared in major cities with apparent cooperation. Commander Zextar watched with satisfaction as humans assembled in designated processing areas. Behind this facade of submission, Elena orchestrated a synchronized global operation. Quantum physicists in research facilities across 6 continents calibrated their experimental generators to the frequencies she identified. Hackers positioned themselves in proximity to each landing zone with specialized equipment. Medical teams distributed a compound derived from common human probiotics, harmless to humans, but specifically tailored to interact with Vexillian biology based on atmospheric samples collected near their ships. The operation required millisecond-precise timing across thousands of locations. Zextar's primary invasion force began its descent, exactly on schedule and exactly as Elena had predicted. In New York's Central Park, transformed into the city's primary processing center, Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted her earpiece while maintaining a posture of defeat. Around her, thousands of volunteers posing as surrendering citizens carried microscopic quantum transmitters disguised as identification badges. Similar scenes played out in London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, and 50 other major cities worldwide. Status report, Elena murmured, her lips barely moving as she watched massive Vexillian landing craft descend through the clouds above Manhattan. Quantum interference network at 97% synchronization. Dr. Sophia's voice replied in her ear. All generators report ready status. Biological compound distribution complete in all target zones, Dr. Maya confirmed. Atmospheric concentration optimal for Vexillian respiratory absorption. From his position in a repurposed gaming center near Times Square, Milo reported, infiltration packages prepped and ready for deployment. All hackers standing by worldwide. Alina checked her watch. The Vexillian ships descended with mathematical precision, exactly matching the arrival schedule they had transmitted earlier. Their predictability had become their vulnerability. In his command ship, Commander Zextar observed the landing operation with satisfaction. His subordinate, Sub-Commander Vextal, approached with a report. All human population centers report full compliance, Commander. Resistance has been minimal and ineffective, as predicted by conquest models. Excellent, Zextar replied, his scaled fingers tapping a precise rhythm on his command console. Proceed with Phase 2 deployment. Begin resource assessment and population categorization. The first wave of Vexillian troops disembarked from their vessels, their movements synchronized with mechanical precision. Each soldier followed exactly the same patrol pattern, maintaining identical distances from one another as they established perimeters around the landing zones. Alina waited until the maximum number of troops had deployed, then whispered into her communicator, "Initiate Operation Uncertainty." Across the globe, thousands of human fingers pressed activation buttons simultaneously. On the surface, nothing seemed to happen. No explosions, no visible attacks, no dramatic resistance. The Vexillian troops continued their methodical deployment, unaware that the air they breathed now carried specialized probiotic molecules designed to slow their neural processes by fractions of seconds. The quantum interference generators powered up gradually, their effect invisible but building toward a critical threshold. Hackers worldwide waited with fingers poised over keyboards, each assigned to target specific systems during the brief window of vulnerability Alina's team had identified. Commander Zextar leaned forward, noticing a minor fluctuation in his ship's communication array. Diagnostic report, he ordered, following standard protocol. Likely atmospheric interference, his technician responded, within acceptable parameters. Zextar nodded, unaware that this small anomaly was exactly what Alina had predicted, the first sign that the perfect Vexillian machine was about to encounter something it had never been programmed to handle, orchestrated chaos. The Vexillian landing crafts descended with mathematical precision toward Earth's surface. In her command center, Alina watched multiple screens tracking their approach. Now, she said quietly into her communications device. Across the planet, quantum generators activated simultaneously, creating a field of interference precisely tuned to the Vexillian communication frequency. On the screens, the alien ships continued their descent for 3 seconds before stuttering in confusion. Zextar's transmission to his fleet suddenly fragmented into static. The landing crafts held position, unable to proceed without continuous command confirmation, a safety protocol Alina's team had identified. The Vexillian system, designed to prevent rogue actions from lower ranks, had become their vulnerability. In the momentary communication blackout, thousands of hackers simultaneously executed their distributed attack, inserting subtle code mutations into the temporarily exposed Vexillian network. Not enough to be detected as an attack, but enough to introduce cascading variables into their rigid systems. In Central Park, Alina watched as the massive ship above her halted its descent, hovering uncertainly. The Vexillian troops already on the ground froze in place, their neural implants awaiting updated commands that couldn't penetrate the quantum interference field. For exactly 7 minutes and 22 seconds, the calculation window Alina's team had identified, the invaders stood immobilized. Phase 2, Alina whispered into her communicator. Around the world, specialized drones released concentrated clouds of the probiotic compound directly into the Vexillian troops' breathing apparatus. The biological agent would take time to affect their neural pathways, but once established, would create micro-delays in their cognitive processing. Delays imperceptible to the Vexillians, but sufficient to disrupt their perfectly synchronized operations. On his command ship, Zextar experienced something entirely new to his species: confusion. The holographic displays surrounding him showed contradictory information. Communication channels that had operated flawlessly across 17 planetary conquests suddenly reported signal degradation. His subordinates turned to him for direction, their training insufficient for this unprecedented situation. "Implement Emergency Protocol Sequence Alpha 96, he commanded, falling back on established procedures. The communication officers attempted to bypass the affected channels, unaware that Alina's team had predicted this exact response and prepared countermeasures specifically calibrated to it. As the quantum interference reached its peak intensity, Milo activated the final phase of the attack. "Deploying infiltration package now," he announced to the team. His fingers flew across his keyboard, directing thousands of hackers worldwide to simultaneously target the Vexillian network's temporarily exposed access points. The code they inserted wasn't designed to shut down alien systems that would be detected and countered immediately. Instead, it introduced subtle mathematical inconsistencies into their navigational calculations, environmental readings, and tactical displays. Each change was small enough to pass automatic security checks, but would compound over time, creating cascading errors throughout their rigidly integrated systems. Commander Zextar felt the first flicker of an unfamiliar emotion: doubt. The interference cleared after precisely the duration their protocols anticipated for atmospheric anomalies, allowing communication to resume. But something had changed. Reports from ground forces included microsecond delays. Environmental sensors detected biological markers not present in their pre-invasion scans. Most concerning, the supposedly surrendering humans showed subtle variations in behavior patterns that didn't match conquest models. "Recalibrate all systems and resume deployment," Zextar ordered, unaware that this command was exactly what Alina had predicted and prepared for. As communication resumed and the Vexillian forces continued their invasion, they did so with systems subtly but irrevocably compromised, operating on calculations that grew increasingly inaccurate with each passing minute. Commander Zextar restored communications after implementing emergency protocols, but something had changed. His carefully coordinated invasion force reported anomalies they couldn't explain. Navigation systems showing imperceptible discrepancies, environmental sensors detecting biological markers that weren't in their databases. The humans still appeared compliant, yet Vexillian officers experienced increasing disorientation as they breathed Earth's atmosphere, now subtly infused with Alina's probiotic compound. Zextar, following standard protocol for minor disruptions, ordered his secondary command ships to take control of the operation. This predictable response played directly into Alina's strategy. The secondary commanders, more susceptible to rigid thinking than their leader, followed their protocols exactly as the human team had modeled. Their ships descended in perfect formation, directly into the strongest concentration of quantum interference and biological agents. For the first time in recorded Vexillian history, a planetary conquest operation fell behind schedule. In the hidden command center beneath New York, Alina monitored the escalating confusion among the Vexillian forces. "Their neural networks are showing the first signs of degradation," Dr. Maya reported, studying biological readings from sensors placed near the landing zones. "The probiotic compound is establishing itself in their system." Dr. Sophia checked her quantum interference readings. "They've adapted their communication frequencies as expected, but they're still vulnerable to our secondary disruption bands." Milo grinned as he tracked the spreading effects of his code infiltration. Their navigation systems are showing the cumulative error rate of 0.3% and climbing. Not enough for them to detect as an attack, but enough to make their precision deployments increasingly inaccurate. On his command ship, Zextar felt an unfamiliar sensation, perspiration beading along his scaled brow. Status reports from ground forces arrived 2.7 seconds later than scheduled. Environmental analysis teams reported inconsistent atmospheric readings. Most disturbing, The deployed troops showed minute variations in their movements, their perfect synchronization deteriorating in ways too subtle for their diagnostic systems to flag as critical. Implement full override protocols, Zextar commanded. I will personally direct ground operations. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Vextal, approached with concern. Commander, standard procedure dictates maintaining command hierarchy separation during conquest operations. These conditions are not standard, Zextar replied, experiencing the strange discomfort of deviating from established protocols. Something about this planet is different. As Zextar's personal shuttle prepared for descent, Alina's team entered the next phase of their plan. They're responding exactly as predicted, she told world leaders via secure communication. The commander is taking personal control, abandoning their standard command structure. The president of the United Global Council looked skeptical. But their technology remains vastly superior. What does it matter if their commander is personally involved? Alina smiled slightly. Because now we're no longer fighting an army. We're fighting an individual. And while their collective technology is formidable, their individual adaptability is not. By drawing Zextar personally into the field, we've reduced their greatest advantage, distributed processing power, and exposed their greatest weakness, the rigid thinking of a single commander. Across Earth's major cities, Vexillian landing operations continued, but with subtle degradations. Their once perfect formation showed minute inconsistencies. Their deployment patterns, previously identical across all landing zones, began to show variations as individual unit commanders attempted to compensate for communication delays and erroneous sensor data. Alina checked the countdown timer on her display. Prepare for Phase 3, she instructed her team. The moment Zextar's shuttle enters our atmosphere, we introduce true chaos. Furious at the mounting complications, Zextar took unprecedented action, personally leading his elite forces to Earth's surface to establish primary control points. Alina monitored his descent with tense anticipation. This reaction exceeded their predicted response timeframe by only 73 seconds. The Vexillian commander landed at the United Earth Council headquarters, expecting to find surrendering human leaders. Instead, he encountered Alina herself, apparently alone. Your interference is noted but irrelevant, he stated dismissively. Your species lacks the technological capacity to resist. Alina smiled slightly. Technology isn't everything, Commander. You might want to check your ship. As if on cue, Zextar received urgent communications. Throughout his fleet, systems were behaving erratically. Officers reported confusion and disorientation, and most alarmingly, human military forces were not where they should be. Alina's strategy had never aimed to match Vexillian technology, but to create an environment of unpredictability that their rigid thinking couldn't process. We don't need better weapons, Alina explained calmly. We just need you to experience something you've never encountered, genuine uncertainty. Zextar's scales shifted color slightly, the Vexillian equivalent of a scowl. Explain yourself, human. What have you done to my forces? We've introduced variables, Alina replied simply. Your species evolved for perfection in a stable environment. Ours evolved for adaptation in a chaotic one. You conquered worlds through technological superiority against predictable resistance. We're offering you something different, unpredictable resistance on multiple fronts simultaneously. In her ear, Alina heard Milo's excited voice. The code mutations have reached critical mass. Their navigation systems are showing a 4.3% error rate, enough to make precision targeting impossible. Dr. Maya added, biological compound has fully integrated with 87% of deployed Vexillian troops. Their neural processing speed is degraded by approximately 0.9 seconds per decision node. Zextar's hand moved to the weapon at his side, but hesitated. Another unprecedented action for a Vexillian commander. This is impossible. Our conquest protocols are infallible. Only against species that think like you do, Alina countered. You've never encountered genuine cognitive diversity before. Your perfect system depends on predictable variables. We're introducing unpredictable ones. Across the globe, the carefully orchestrated human response entered its final phase. Military forces that had appeared to surrender suddenly dispersed in seemingly random patterns, confounding Vexillian tracking systems designed to monitor large organized movements. Civilian populations that had gathered in processing centers dispersed through unpredictable escape routes. Most critically, the quantum interference generators switched to random frequency modulations that the Vexillian systems couldn't adapt to with their rigid algorithms. Zextar received increasingly urgent communications from his fleet. Ships reported navigation errors resulting in near collisions. Ground forces lost cohesion as individual soldiers, affected by the neural slowing compound, fell out of synchronization with their units. The infiltration code had spread throughout their network, creating cascading errors in their integrated systems. For the first time in his distinguished conquest career, Commander Zextar faced a situation for which he had no protocol. The human before him showed no fear, the planet's resistance followed no recognizable pattern, and his own forces exhibited behavior that defied prediction models. "You have no weapons that can harm our ships," he stated, clinging to the certainty of technological superiority. "We don't need to harm your ships," Alina replied. "We just need to introduce enough uncertainty to make your perfect invasion impossible. Check your conquest timeline, Commander. You're already 17 minutes behind schedule, with deviation increasing exponentially. How does your species handle failure?" Commander Zextar stood in disbelief as reports of failure cascaded through his command network. His mighty invasion force, capable of devastating entire civilizations, found itself paralyzed not by superior firepower, but by an inability to adapt to rapidly changing variables. The probiotic compound affected Vexillian neural pathways, slowing their already rigid thinking processes. The quantum interference prevented their ships from coordinating attacks. Most devastatingly, the subtle code mutations had compounded throughout their systems, creating unpredictable behaviors that their engineers couldn't resolve through standard protocols. Alina revealed the final element of humanity's defense, a captured Vexillian communication array, reprogrammed to broadcast across their fleet. "Your options are simple," she told the commander. "Retreat with your forces intact, or continue a conflict that, for the first time, you cannot calculate with certainty." Facing an unwinnable scenario by Vexillian strategic standards, Zextar made the only logical choice. "This is unprecedented," the Vexillian commander stated, his normal confidence replaced by confusion. 17 successful conquests, and now, failure against a technologically inferior species. "Not inferior," Alina corrected. "Just different. Your evolution rewarded consistency and precision. Ours rewarded creativity and adaptation." Around them, the coordinated chaos of humanity's resistance continued to accelerate. The infiltration code had reached the Vexillian fleet's primary navigation systems, causing fluctuations in their stabilization fields. Ships that had maintained perfect formation now struggled to avoid collision courses. Ground forces reported complete inability to track human movements that followed no discernible pattern. Zextar's communication officer reported with trembling voice, "All conquest protocols have failed, Commander. System errors are compounding faster than our diagnostics can identify them." For the first time in recorded Vexillian history, a commander faced total mission failure. Zextar studied Alina, seeing this human not as an inferior being, but as a worthy opponent who had achieved the impossible through intelligence rather than force. "You never intended direct resistance," he realized. "Your entire strategy was to introduce uncertainty into our systems." Alina nodded. "We recognize that your perfect machine could be defeated not by attacking your strengths, but by creating an environment where your strengths became weaknesses. Perfect systems fail catastrophically when faced with enough unpredictable variables." Zextar made his decision, another unprecedented moment for his species. "I hereby declare this conquest terminated. Earth will be classified as non-viable for Vexillian acquisition." As the alien ships struggled to re-establish enough system stability to retreat from Earth's orbit, humanity watched with a mixture of relief and pride. Not a single conventional weapon had been fired, not a single direct attack launched. Earth had defended itself through understanding, ingenuity, and the coordinated application of intelligence. In the aftermath, as celebrations erupted across the planet, Alina's team gathered in their command center, exhausted but triumphant. "Do you think they'll come back with better technology?" Dr. Sophia wondered. Alina shook her head. "They won't return, but not because they fear our resistance. They won't return because we introduce something far more dangerous to their perfect, rigid civilization than any weapon." "What's that?" Milo asked. "Ideas," Alina replied. "Ideas about adaptation, about cognitive flexibility, about the value of chaos and uncertainty. We've shown them a different way of thinking, and for a species built on perfect consistency, new ideas are the most dangerous weapons of all." As the last Vexillian ship disappeared from Earth's sensors, humanity looked to the stars with renewed confidence. They had proven that intelligence, creative, adaptive, collaborative intelligence, could overcome even the most overwhelming technological advantage. Among the countless civilizations of the galaxy, Earth had established itself not as the strongest or most advanced, but perhaps as the most ingenious.